Hey everybody, this is Professor Lilly, and I want to talk to you about week 2 in American popular culture, CM306. And as you know, last week I highly recommended that you do your pre-reading here um, last week so that you were ready for this week. So, two readings, and and they are both integral to the two assignments for this week, which are to participate in this discussion forum about where you give some examples or you select some examples of popular culture from your life and talk about them briefly, and then the popular culture primer quiz. So those are the two assignments for the week. But first, let me talk about the readings. Um, the first one here is a popular culture primer, and that's found on the Loyola library website. So when you click on this link here, if you're not already logged into the Loyola Notre Dame library website, it's going to ask you to use your credentials to do that, and then it will bring you here to this primer. And I like this primer because it's really straight and to the point and talks about kind of like the scholarly underpinnings of what popular culture is, but general definitions as well. So what we have here, even in the abstract, just a quick definition of what culture is, and then generally what people understand as popular culture based on that. As we see here, popular culture is generally seen as a set of signifying practices that produce meaning. So what does that mean, signifying practices? Well, we can make meaning through language. Our species has been doing that a long, long time. But signifying would be making symbols. So when you write language down, or when you do some kind of produce some sort of a media product, like a book or a photograph or a movie or a song, you're going to another level with your language and creating something that stands beyond your body in that signifying practice. And I'm going to talk about this more in lectures, I think next week and the week after that, in terms of specifically what do we mean in semiotics when we talk about what a sign is. And then the second thing here is when we talk about popular culture, it's important to note that we're talking about a common culture. So if you think about, let's say, when the first Europeans came to the continent that we live on now and engaged with native people, we could at that point they neither of them had any sort of common culture together, right? Each of them separately had common cultures. So in the native culture, they would have told, or they would have had language. They would have told stories through language, through songs, through written symbols to convey meaning. They would have had different religions, different ways of understanding the world. Now they were all humans who lived on this planet, right? But they did not have a common culture with those Europeans, right? Who had different religions, different ways of seeing the world, different language, certainly. And so separate, very distinct, separate cultures that only then were starting to come together. And we couldn't even really think about the cultures coming together really until well after they were highly influencing each other and learning about each other's cultures. But today, right, you could be someone, be people in completely having completely different primary languages, and you could all watch the same like Marvel movie coming out, or you can listen to the same songs by the same bands because we live in a global culture. And through capitalism, these products are spread throughout the world, and is particularly in the last 30 years with the internet, even more so, right? So there's, I would say, very, 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 very few people in the world who aren't participating in this or part of this global culture, like maybe some tribes people in the Amazon or something like that. So, but like it's much more. I mean, 99%, even more than 99.9% of all humans are now part of this global culture. Now, it doesn't mean that we all know every aspect of that culture, and it's common to each one of us, right? So if we we're going to sit together and have a conversation about our favorite bands, there would be bands that I wouldn't have heard of and you wouldn't have heard of and I would know. I mean, things like that. So it doesn't mean everything is completely common, right? And we also live in a culture that has so many different types of media that it also kind of separates us in a way in terms of we can't have the same kind of conversation about the same cultural products that maybe were possible 20 or 30 or 40 years, or probably even more, 40, 50 years ago, when there were not that many of these cultural products in media I'm talking about, that to talk about that most people in the American context, when there were only 3 television stations and some radio stations, would know all of the same pop culture products. So anyway, this reading is not that long, and I encourage you to take notes. And part of the reason why I encourage you to take notes is that the popular culture primer quiz, those questions all come from that reading. Okay, so the quiz questions all come from this popular culture primer. It's okay for you to take notes and look at your notes when you're doing the quiz, but please don't have the primer open and just search for the questions. Instead, you can use your notes from the reading. Okay, so the second reading here is Harry Potter and Functions of Popular Culture. And when you open it up as a PDF, you can save it to your computer too if you want, or read it directly from here. And the reason why I like that, or like this reading, is because it kind of gets into some of the same questions. It kind of gets into the notions of what is popular culture and why is it important to understand it. It approaches it a little bit more distinctly from a sociological perspective. So a lot of you took sociology classes for a couple of your core courses. So some of these scholars he's talking about, some of the language he's using you should recognize. And I also think it's just kind of provocative. So at the end of his introduction here, because he's starting to talk about common aspects of crime in society. So again, taking a sociological perspective. And he says here, when he's introducing the main portion of the article, this list will guide my argument that popular culture, like crime, is a necessary and healthy element of modern society, right? So it's kind of provocative, and particularly that argument itself isn't like the main aspect of what I want you to get into in this article, but I just think it's provocative, and so hopefully it will tempt your curiosity, your intellect. And then he gets into kind of a different way of thinking about popular culture. So I think, it's good for you to kind of read this in a different way more than once, because this is kind of the foundation of starting to think about the questions in our analysis of media, like songs and movies, that we're going to get into later in the semester. And then in the second half of the article, he gets into, and again, it's a very sociological perspective, this article. And so he's starting to talk about behavioral norms, social rituals, and he does that. Actually, I'm saying he, but I think the author might not be a he, so I shouldn't say. I should say they. He does that in order to kind of do an analysis, or using Harry Potter as a way to think about how can we analyze popular culture texts and help them to better understand our world, our society that we live in. And that's kind of the basis of what we're going to be doing in this class. And and I don't think you might want to highlight some aspects from that article, and you're going to use that, your kind of breakdown and some what you learned in that article for the other main assignment, which is the week 2 discussion here. So let me talk about that next. Okay, before I do that, the quiz you can take anytime after you read the popular culture primer here. So you could do that today. You could do it. You could do it tomorrow, Wednesday. The most important thing, though, is you need to do it by the time, well, first, before you take the quiz, okay? and then before you do the discussion, because that will also inform your main post for the discussion. Um, so again, you could do the quiz anytime. You could do it today, um, and the week 2 discussion after you've done these 2 readings. Okay, so let's talk about the week 2 discussion. Okay, so um, make sure you read through these guidelines. The first aspect of the guidelines here, and so I've said so, and this is going to be common for a lot of activities this semester, is that when we're doing a discussion forum, it's basically asking you to do the reading and write whatever the prompt is for the discussion, um, write it up and submit it by Wednesday night. So you can see it's at 11:59 at night. So basically, for a lot of these discussions, you have 3 days. And again, this is an asynchronous class, so whenever you have time, do the readings and write up the prompt and post it on the discussion forum by Wednesday night. And the reason why by Wednesday night is because then, in the days after that, it's asking you to read some other people's posts and comment on them. So that's why it's considered a discussion. In terms of the grading, certainly the main portion I'm going to be looking at is that you just follow these prompts, and I'm going to be looking at your initial post, and then I'm just going to look at that you had some good insights when you responded to others in the discussion forum. So then you have several days just to kind of read what other people said, and in these posts, these prompts, and there are some guidelines for your peer response guide, but they're not super substantive. That the main aspect is your initial post. Okay, so again, do that at your leisure. But that's one reason why generally when there's a reading, we ask you to consider trying to try to read ahead, just because it makes it so that these 3 days you don't have as much. I mean, and if you feel a little bit pressure to get this post out by Wednesday night, then you certainly could do the quiz after Wednesday. So once that relief is done, you have the post posted to the discussion forum, then you could worry about the quiz after that. So the quiz is not due done until next Sunday. So you have a little bit more time for that if that helps you to feel a little bit less pressured. Okay, so this first part here is just talking about the format and what you need to do. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do is choose a popular culture text, okay? And sometimes you'll hear me talk about cultural object, and that's just the same idea, the same term. Um, and so it could be a movie, a TV show, a book, a song. Um, you could say a social media account, because one meme is a little bit hard to kind of get into unless it becomes really popular. I mean, like, you could say, if you said the Bernie Sanders mitten memes like together, that's a pretty substantive thing. So technically, that's many texts, right? Because how many of those Bernie Sanders mitten memes are there now? Hundreds, right? So if you just chose one, it might not be quite enough for you to really unpack it. It could be. I mean, if it was really, you. But probably if you said the whole meme phenomena of Bernie Sanders mittens, then that would probably be something that you can analyze as well. And this should be an artistic work, so not nonfiction. So we're talking about novels, TV shows, like fiction TV shows, movies, songs. Okay. And then I want you to choose. So this part should be a little bit easier, hopefully. But you might want to start with number 2, because I want you to talk with someone from an older generation. So if you're living with parents, a parent, an older sibling, a grandparent. And so, one suggestion that I have is maybe start with a genre. So choose one of these. So decide, okay, I'm just going to focus on movies, or I'm going to focus on TV shows, or books, or songs. And it might make it easier if you make that selection first. And so then you could say, ask let's say your mom, for example. So Mom, what's one movie that you think is emblematic of your generation, or when you were a kid or a teenager, that you really loved? And so it's not that hard. So just what's one TV show or book or song, whatever, that you loved when you were a kid or a teenager, or a young adult. and then and then and I don't think I put it in here, but go ahead and choose whatever these two selections are. Have them be from the same category. So both of them movies, both of them TV shows, or both of them songs or books, or because I think that it'll make the comparison a little bit easier. So let's say you chose two TV shows. So you chose an older TV show. Let's say Happy Days. Your mom chose Happy Days, and you chose Stranger Things. Okay, so you have Happy Days and you have Stranger Things. All right. And so that's all you do. And then you start thinking about these prompts. You add a new discussion to topic to the forum. You paste your post into there, and that's it. And then after you're done with that, then you get to the second part after starting on Thursday, where you read a few other people's and comment on them. Okay, so specifically, what do you need your posts? I have it's a two-part post. Okay. And I had a little problem with the formatting for some reason. It's a little bit odd here, and it wouldn't let me change. But you should get the gist. So the first part is where you're talking about and analyzing some aspects. And this is like I don't even know if I'm saying analyzing, because later on we're going to really learn how to analyze a cultural text. But you're kind of more I'm giving you prompts to talk about them. And then the second part, you're talking about briefly about what you learned from the Harry Potter essay. So in the first part, okay, so what are the historical context of your two texts? So in all of these prompts, you want to have a couple sentences for each one of the prompts so that's why I say 1 to 2 paragraphs for each one. So I'm going to write up what's the history of like Henry Winkler, what was the Fonz in Happy Days, and Howard was Richard Cunningham, who later became a famous director. I mean, and then secondly, over in okay, what medium? So Happy Days would have been delivered over broadcast television, and so it's not delivered in the same way that what the TV that we know today for the most part. And yes, so Happy Days, you can find Happy Days probably, and I'm not sure where, but I'm sure you could probably find it at Hulu. You might be able to find it on YouTube now today. And then do the same thing. Talk about Stranger Things. It's coming out on Netflix, and what. And don't get too much. I'm not so much interested in the production history, right? You could talk about what are those guys' names? The Duffer Brothers are the creators of Stranger Things, and you could go on and on all the actors. I'm not really interested in the production aspect, so this is not a course where we're really talking about television as a medium and how to produce television, the actors and the script writers and all that stuff. So we're talking more about what are the popular culture impacts. So we're more interested in the fans and why are people drawn to this kind of narrative? What kind of narrative what kind of narrative is it? What's the genre? So I might come in here and put that. So more like what is the genre of this particular text? For Stranger Things, and then so Stranger Things is a different type of genre than Happy Days. So what are the two different genres we're dealing with here? And then why are they popular? Okay, and so obviously you're going to have to do a little bit of research here. You can link to, but this is not what I consider a research essay. So go out and find out. You're going to be finding out a little bit more about the one that of your of the other generation, because you might not have heard of that text before. And you could do probably a little bit of research on the one that you chose, but you probably already know a lot about it. So you shouldn't have to do a whole lot of research for this assignment. It's not a research assignment so much, but starting to think about popular culture. Okay, what's next? So describe describe how. It doesn't necessarily have to be 3 factors, but think about how this text became popular. So you might read up a little bit about how popular did Stranger Things become, why, and start thinking about why do you think it became so popular, or whatever the text is. Why do people like you or your friends like that particular text? What does it draw on? Like, so maybe Stranger Things might not be the best example because it's really kind of also focuses on the 1980s. But whatever it is that you chose for your text, why do people like you like that text? What is it? Does it talk to your generation? Does it talk about certain experiences you might have? What do you what do you like about it? Why do you think it became popular? And then you're going to have to ask your family member or friend about why did Happy Days become popular? What was it about that TV show that really represented that time when Happy Days was on in the 1970s? And then talk briefly about why is this American? Okay, so Happy Days, really talks about America in the 1950s, and like the Fonzie character was I don't even know what we call that. Like he wore a leather jacket, and he was kind of, I don't want to say punk, but it's not punk. My mother would be able to tell me what the specific name of that kind of subgenre or sub culture was of I guess the Greasers is what he was, and there was a lot of like kind of American diner culture, so they always went to the diner every day. There was some they did the show did bring out a few racial issues. A few sitcoms in the 1970s were starting to kind of acknowledge racial differences and racial tensions and racial equality. It finally started to happen in terms of over 15 years after the civil rights movement. Then finally, American television started to kind of acknowledge it. And then for Stranger Things, it's a sci-fi, almost a teen sci-fi, or in film noir that also kind of delves into the nostalgia of the 1980s. So think about that again and again. A lot of this, it doesn't have to be super. You do a little bit of research, but it's not considered a research paper. Talk about just I want you to be thinking and putting your thoughts down in your post. And then lastly, just what are some of the differences and some similarities between your two selections? So after you do this, I might say, well, I noticed that these are two different genres of television shows. The type of issues that they, Happy Days kind of acknowledges and sometimes addressing like cultural issues that are happening in the 1970s, family issues. It's a sitcom, so a different kind of genre. And whereas Stranger Things, is both a teen drama, but also has lots of aspects of science fiction as well, as delving into the nostalgia from the 1980s. And then, so that's that part. Again, you're going to have to do a little bit of going on and reading about some of the text, and you can put links to those, but it's not intended to be a big research kind of paper assignment. And then lastly, there's just two prompts here, getting you to think a little bit more about the Harry Potter essay. And the first one, what's one thing you learned about how scholars understand what popular culture is? And again, you might talk about that author takes a little bit more of a sociological approach. So think about some of the things they're saying about that popular culture helps our society to do. And then also at the end, he uses Harry Potter as an example of how we can use popular culture to understand our society. And he does that in terms of talking about social boundaries or rituals. So choose one of those and talk about, and this doesn't have to be super long. Okay, so you write all that stuff up, you create a post in the discussion forum, you paste it in there, and you hit save, and your post is in there. So that part of the assignment you're done with by Wednesday night. And then the days after that, starting Thursday, just go and okay. One thing to do is put your everyone can see your name in the discussion forum. So go ahead and put the names of your two texts. Okay, so you could say my post about Happy Days and Stranger Things, or my analysis of Happy Days and Stranger Things, so that if I'm someone in your class and I see those two names and I'm kind of interested, then I'll click on it and I'll read yours. Okay, so you don't have to put your name in there. Your name will show up. So in the title, use the name of the two texts that you selected. Um, and then so you come through and you've done your posts, and Thursday or Friday or Saturday, you come through and you start reading people, and you see a couple names of movies or books or whatever that you're interested in, and you click on it and you read it. And the response is pretty easy. Just say something that you liked the most about their post and thought that was interesting, and then talk about that particular um, text. So why do you think that Happy Days or Stranger Things was interesting? Because you think it's an important kind of American popular culture text, and why you think that is. So responding to what they said about it. So granted, there's 25 students, so it would be crazy for you to have to read all 25. So I'm just asking you to read 3. And then if you come through and choose to do this on Saturday or Sunday, please try to choose someone's who hasn't been responded to, because you can see if there's any replies, or no replies. So if no one's someone's post about whatever, no one's replied to it on Saturday or Sunday, if you choose to go then be kind and read that person's and reply to theirs. And then that's it. So and then we're going to be on to week 3, and I'll send another video just like this talking about that. I could give you a quick heads up. We're going to start into kind of thinking about how to really define and better kind of understand what popular culture is, and also how to analyze it. So really, in the next 3 weeks, we're going to be getting into better understanding what popular culture really is from a scholarly standpoint, and then how do we analyze it through different tools of textual analysis. And then after those 3 weeks, we're going to get into actually analyzing popular culture, specifically in the form of music and then TV, before we get to the final project. Okay, so if you have any questions, email me. And again, the instructions are here, and then also in this video that's on YouTube, and you can watch this video more than once. And again, two main assignments: the discussion and the quiz. All right, thank you, and have a great week, and email me if you have any questions.